Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC Brasilia, Kevin Lee versus Charles Oliveira. And Shaq, it's going down this Saturday in Brasilia, Brazil. A lightweight showdown in the main event. You got the Motown phenom Kevin Lee taking on the man with the most submissions in UFC history, Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, this is a great fight, man, because I like the the vibes between these two. Kevin's his confidence is back now. He came off that vicious KO win over the high prospect and Gregor Gillespie, and Charles has been on a 6-fight win streak. I know some of the competition hasn't been necessarily up to par, but he's still got a couple good wins in there over some legit guys. And I see he dyed his hair blonde the week of the fight, which is it's an interesting move there. But so it's confirmed that there will be no crowd there.
No crowd,
man. So now things are a little bit interesting now. Now Kevin don't even got to deal with no vamos hairs and nothing like that. It's just gonna be silence in there, man. So it's gonna be it's gonna be an interesting night of fights. I can't wait to see how it is with no crowd.
Man, that atmosphere is gonna be, I was gonna say wild, but it's just
it's gonna be fucking dead.
Man, it's one of those things where if you're trying to bet on some of these guys relying on the Brazilian crowd to carry you through, like for example Trinaldo, Makdessi's gonna come out here and try to have a little point battle. Now there's a chance Makdessi gets knocked out, but if this goes the distance, if I was betting on Trinaldo, I'd be relying on the crowd to go fucking crazy every time Trinaldo even attempts a swing. Even if he swings at air, I'm expecting scream. And now that that's not going to happen, I wonder, how these fights that potentially go to decision are going to end up going down, Shaq. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, 100%. With no crowd, I mean, it's not just UFC. It's pretty much a lot. Basketball. Well, basketball got completely shut down. Somebody actually had the coronavirus. Some dude on the Utah Jazz. So, coronavirus is serious, man. It's kind of ruining my sports right now. So,
man, just a quick shout out. Anyone dealing with that, man, we hope you guys get better. I really don't. I'm not as educated or informed on the matter, so pardon my ignorance.
Well, they say older people are more prone to it. So.
Yeah, so just shout out to anyone dealing with that. We hope you improve. And Shaq, before we break down this card, got to let them know to go to bestfightpicks.com. Use that promo code 2020 for 20% off our VIP. Or if you want to deal with us individually, use Shaq's promo code Shaq for 10% off, or use mine, Dan, for 10% off, all lowercase, at bestfightpicks.com. And Shaq, let's break down this whole card start to finish, because first up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Veronica Macedo, she's 6-3, and Malecki is 1-0. Currently, they got Veronica Macedo -170. The comeback on Malecki is +150. Shaq, this is interesting because Veronica Macedo's moving up to the bantamweight division. You actually saw her UFC debut at bantamweight, so it's not like she's a stranger there. You saw her fight Ashley Evan Smith, so you saw that spinning back kick she landed to the gut of Evan Smith, and then after that, nothing else happened. But with Malecki, she's only 1-0 as a pro. She's going to be significantly larger here, but she's only 1-0 as a pro. So I think that's why Veronica's favored here. Now, oftentimes, if you see that kind of line next to Veronica, you might want to look to her opponent. But do you trust a 1-0 opponent here who has a serious size advantage, but maybe not skills?
I don't think you really have to trust her. Macedo did look. I mean, she had that nice armbar over Poliana Viana her last fight. It was a sick armbar. That was very legit. So you got to be. Malecki's I think she's a Swedish Muay Thai champion. She's got good Muay Thai skills. Definitely got the length on Macedo, so she can keep this at range and keep this on the feet. I actually think that she can have some success, at least make this 1-1 going into the third round. Macedo's not necessarily the type where, from a betting perspective, when I say, a lot of these chick fights going 1-1 into the third round, no matter if it's lined, pick-em-ish or -300. I mean, a lot of them they still end up being 1-1 going into the third round. And I mean, I'd rather be on the dog side. And Macedo doesn't necessarily strike me as the type that is gonna, take over in that third round. She likes to grapple more, and she does have the grappling edge. So if she's able to hit an armbar on Malecki, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But I actually think Malecki's gonna come out here with her 1-0 record and pull off the upset. I know my boy Safe's gonna have the game plan. She's been putting in work at Fortis. Macedo's been. I heard she's been putting in work with my boy Cyril. Just kidding. I think it's more of a 50-50 fight, so I'll take the dog.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me to call. The size difference is going to be a big factor, like I mentioned, but so is the experience. Look, Veronica Macedo has already had 10 professional fights. This is Bea Malecki's second pro fight, but training out of Fortis MMA, maybe she's got something good going on there. And I do agree it's a dog or pass situation, but ultimately I'm going to side with the favorite in this spot, Shaq. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Bruno Bulldog Silva, he's 10-4, and David Dvorak is 17-3. Currently, they got
real quick, guys. Y'all know Bruno Bulldog Silva with the split with the guy with one leg.
And real quick, guys, Bruno Bulldog won to draw with Casey Kenny.
Hey,
it's just facts.
The judges messed up. That was actually a draw.
Currently, they got Bruno Silva minus 120. The comeback on David Dvorak is plus 100. Well, Shaq, it's interesting because they got this Czech prospect, David Dvorak. He's 17-3, making that UFC debut. So I was very intrigued to see what he brings to the table. Because look, Bruno Silva, he's decent. He's well-rounded, but he can be beaten. But I was kind of underwhelmed by David Dvorak a little bit, man. It's a bit of that padded record and the competition that he fought on the regional scene, just to put in perspective. I mean, he is coming off a win over a 16-2 guy, but that 16-2 isn't, there's 16-2s and then there's 16-2s. You know what I'm saying? This 16-2 guy was coming off wins over 0-0 opponents and 2-4 opponents and 0-1 opponents. So it was very padded. And prior to that, my boy David Dvorak beat a 4-4 opponent, and not to wiki cap and do all these things, but when I watched the tape for myself, I just was kind of underwhelmed. He is pretty tall for the weight class. He is kind of long. He's knocked guys out, he's choked guys out, and I wouldn't be surprised if he caught the chin of Bruno Bulldog, because that's one thing we've noticed. He has a bit of a suspect chin, but ultimately, I'm going to go with the experience of Bruno Bulldog here, man. I think he'll be able to grind out 2 of the rounds, mix in some takedowns, and win a decision.
Yeah, this is one of the more closely matched fights because, I do think Bruno Bulldog could be one of these guys that's 2 out the door. One of your typical tough guy Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. Sometimes he is a liability on the feet, and when you really look at his career and his wins that he's sustained in his career, they really are nothing to write home about. I know he went to draw with Casey Kenny, but sometimes Casey has a bad round, man. He'll stop fighting. But nah, I think this kid David Dvorak is long. I feel like he probably projects better in the long term, but he's gonna definitely have to elevate his game because this ain't the Czech Republic anymore. And historically speaking, Czech Republic fighters usually they usually don't pan out. So,
up until this point, they haven't done as well inside the octagon.
And we had Pudilova, you had Carlos Vemola. So let's see if David can, third time's the charm for them. Let's see if he can actually get some wins here. He's a super big flyweight, man. I feel like Bruno's going to struggle with his size a little bit, but I agree that you just seem average. I didn't come away impressed, but I didn't think he sucked either. So, 50-50 fight, I'll take the dog. I'll go the opposite side, David. I think that somewhere along the lines, Bruno will get dropped. And Bruno doesn't have that crowd on his side either, man. So maybe David, for a debutant, maybe he'll be able to think a little bit better, think a little bit more smoothly. And so I'll take him for the win.
Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Mayra Bueno Silva, she's 6-0, and Maryna Moroz is 9-3. Currently, they got Mayra Bueno Silva minus 145. The comeback on Maryna Moroz is plus 125. So, Shaq, I was very impressed with Mayra Bueno Silva UFC debut against Jillian Robertson. Went out there, finished her in the first round. Prior to that, had that ninja choke on Contender Series. So this chick has definitely been going out there impressing me with both of her performances. Obviously, had to deal with that injury in that last fight against Robertson. But, man, she overcame adversity with a hurt leg. She still went out there and finished the fight, Shaq. Now she's got the chance to come out here and overcome the tennis sounds of Maryna Moroz. And what's interesting about this is that the judges are going to hear the tennis sounds very, very loud and clear here. There's no crowd to overcome those sounds. Anytime Mayra Bueno Silva does something, the crowd's not going to be going crazy because the crowd's not going to be there. So the tennis sounds will be very, very loud and clear for these judges, Shaq. Do you think that'll have an effect on this matchup?
Yeah, it's a good fight because I am impressed with Bueno. She seems like she's got a little bit, some dynamic ability in her with the spinning kicks to the gut, like how she showed you on against Robertson. I mean, she was throwing some hard punches as well. she did get taken down, but she was attacking off her back, was able to pull off an armbar. But Moroz, I kind of do think Moroz is better than Jillian. Moroz, I'll tell you what, she looked good her last fight against Sabina Mazo. A lot of people weren't expecting that win out of her. And the difference in the performance, in my opinion, was it just seemed like she was a lot more aggressive for once. Usually she likes to sit back and punch the air. But I guess, now that she's with American Top Team, maybe they're... during that fight, I just heard the commentators mention that American Top Team's trying to make Maryna Moroz more aggressive. So, she actually bloodied up somebody's nose her last fight. Sabina Mazo's nose was leaking blood. So, Moroz made a step forward, in my opinion. She's got tons of experience. And let's not forget, man, this girl was really young while she was taking some of those losses. I think she's only like 26 or... she was fighting at spars. I know I like to make jokes about her, Valerie Letourneau, but those girls are a lot older than her. Valerie fought for a title in 2 different promotions. Mayra Bueno is the more talented fighter. It seems like she throws harder. It seems like, she's got a little bit of a jiu-jitsu game as well. But Moroz is definitely going to be a test, and more so the details of the game, in the clinch, the positioning. Now we're really going to see what Mayra Bueno's got. I definitely favor Mayra Bueno, but I agree with where it's lined at. I feel like she should be slightly favored over Moroz. I know Moroz kind of doesn't have the best reputation for the air punching, but man, I just know that experience holds big value in this weight class, in my opinion. Mayra Bueno's only got 6 or 7 fights, and Moroz has been in there with the likes of, like I said earlier, Esparza and all these girls. So Joanne Calderwood, so I think I'll pick Bueno for the win. I don't want to say it's dog or pass, but I would just say that it could be sketchy, man. Like I said, with these girl fights, Moroz, like you said, there ain't gonna be no crowd there. And now you're just gonna be hearing the sounds, and she's making a bunch of sounds. Ha 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 ha. One of these judges. Look, the judges these days are on their phones during the fight, so you gotta be careful, man. And that's just facts. They got pictures to prove that. So, so I'll pick Mayra Bueno. I think she's more talented, more powerful. But I respect Maryna Moroz.
Look, with a crowd there, I got Mayra Bueno Silva, but without a crowd, I think I might be leaning more towards the upset, man. It's going to be completely silent in there, and, Mayra Bueno has kind of got that methodical Muay Thai style standing, and she's got a very good ground game as well, but Maryna Moroz is going to be out there running around making those tennis sounds. Ha ha! And, man, I just wish the crowd was there to carry on Mayra Bueno Silva. That way, anytime she does anything, they could be going crazy. But unfortunately, that's not going to be happening. So now I'm going to go with Maryna Moroz to win a controversial split decision. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Rani Yahya, he's 26-10, and Enrique El Fuerte Barzola is 16-5. Currently, they got Enrique Barzola -185. The comeback on Rani Yahya is +160. Shaq, we've been asking Enrique Barzola to make the drop to bantamweight, and now he's finally doing it, but it's no easy task to take on the seriously well-respected Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Rani Yahya in his bantamweight debut. You think Enrique Barzola's wrestling defense will hold up here and he'll be able to beat the black belt?
Yeah, this is a very good fight. I'm glad to see Enrique finally make that drop down. And one thing I'll say about Enrique, man, this guy fights with a spirit that this guy comes to fight. He's got that Peruvian warrior mentality, and I'm glad now he's finally not going to be undersized. Every fight he's in, we're talking, he's fighting big boys like Aguilar. Aguilar used to weigh 300 pounds. Bobby Moffitt's a big featherweight. Matt Bissett, those guys are big. Gabriel Mowgli Benitez, he's always undersized in his fights, and it kind of makes things really tricky for him. And now he's actually going to have a size advantage. And if you've been seeing some of the pictures, El Fuerte, he looks jacked up. And coming off his last fight against Movsar Evloev, man, I gained a lot of, I already had a lot of respect for El Fuerte, but man, the way that fight, I don't want to say that it was closer than the cards read, but it was a good fight, man. Movsar Evloev, I don't know if you guys have heard me in the past, but I've been on the record to call this kid Little Khabib. I mean, this kid can wrestle his ass off. His transitions are insane. And El Fuerte was able to not only, have success stuffing the majority of those, but he even took Masvidal down, and he even actually slammed Masvidal. So that was a very impressive fight, even though he took a loss, in my opinion. And I feel like that was probably the final straw where these guys wanted to drop down, because Evloev, man, I know he's a former bantamweight himself, but man, he's grown so big over the last few years, and now you see Evloev has to stay at 145s because he can't make bantamweight anymore. So I think that this fight with Rani, a legend of the sport, a legend of the division. I mean, I remember this guy back in WEC tapping dudes out. Rani Yahya is a bad dude. He's got some good submission wins, but, let's just be honest here. He fought Henry Briones, Russell Doan, and Luke Sanders. All those guys got, for the most part, no ground games. And, his fight with Ricky Simone, he got absolutely dominated. I know he landed a couple big shots on Ricky, but, Ricky Simon is reckless when it comes to striking.
Ricky's got no chin.
And Ricky's chinny as fuck. So, I respect Rani Yahya. Of course, he can submit anyone, but I actually think El Fuerte has the better wrestling here. I think he can take Rani down. I mean, you see how easily Ricky was just hitting basic double legs, and Rani was just going to his back. He wanted nothing to do with her. He had no success grappling with Ricky. So I feel like a stronger guy, wrestler base like El Fuerte is going to give him troubles here. And I think that Rani Yahya is actually in trouble here. I think El Fuerte is going to look the best he has at this right weight class. He's ripped, he's shredded. And I feel like, the move to AKA, this is where it's finally going to pay off. He's 1-1 at that team now. But, man, I was really impressed with this fight against Masvidal Evloev, and I think he's going to have success here against Rani. I think he actually ends his decision ways and gets a finish. So I'll go with El Fuerte.
Wow, Shaq's going with the finish here. Look, Enrique El Fuerte Barzola has been impressive to me as well throughout his entire career, because he was outsized at featherweight, but he still went out there and he was picking those guys up like Matt Hughes, running to the center of the octagon and slamming them. Always exciting to watch. And here against Rani Yahya, he gets to use his wrestling in reverse, gets to keep this fight standing, and gets to show off some of that striking. We saw in that third round against Aguilar, when he finally decided to commit and throw big bombs, he was out there. I thought he almost knocked out Aguilar in that third round, and I think if he goes out there with that same vicious intent here against Rani Yahya, he can go out here and finish the fight as well. But if not, swim through the leg lock attacks, maintain that top position, and go out there and shut this guy down, win that decision. So I'm glad to see El Fuerte Barzola making the drop to bantamweight, and I think he's going to do well here. But look, Rani Yahya, he's a guy you can't count out. I mean, he's had 11 victories inside the octagon. Just to get 2 victories is one thing, but to win 11 times inside the UFC, I mean, the guy's a beast, man. He's definitely held his spot in the company. Not a lot of guys can say they have an 11-4 record with the company, and they've been in the UFC this long. I mean, I know you remember him back in the WEC. Rani Yahya is a real badass, a real legend for the underground fans, the hardcore. So we love the guy, but I agree.
Remember my boy Hadi versus Eddie Wineland back in the day?
Yeah, that was a little banger. I mean, you remember when he beat Mike Brown? That was an upset at the time, man. So, yeah, I like Rani Yahya, but I think this is a bad matchup for him, so I'm going to go with Barzola. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, he's 21-6, and Aleksei Kunchenko is 20-1. Currently, they got Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos -130. The comeback on Aleksei Kunchenko is +110. Well, Shaq, both these guys are coming off their first losses in a while. Obviously, Kunchenko's on a 20-fight win streak, had it snapped against Gilbert Durinho Burns, and Elizeu Zaleski was on a 7-fight win streak, went to China against Jing Liang, got knocked out. Now, here's my question, man, because you saw Jing Liang's last fight against Magny, kind of makes the whole Zaleski thing a head-scratcher, because I'm curious, if Zaleski would have fought Jing Liang anywhere outside of China, would he have had a much better performance? Because it really looked like Zaleski was very subdued in there, didn't quite perform like himself. But at the same time, Jing Liang does hit like a truck, so I don't want to discredit that performance. It's just a bit of a head scratcher after seeing Lee get so dominated when we thought that he had passed that point of his career. And Zaleski, we hold in such high regard, so I'm very curious to see how he looks this week, and it's going to tell me a lot. And with Kunchenko, kind of got started a little bit too late in that Gilbert Durinho Burns fight. Ended up losing a close decision. Came on, too late in that third round. Had already lost the first 2 rounds. So man, what do you think about this matchup between the truck Kunchenko and Zaleski? Because it's interesting. You got the capoeira kicks of Zaleski, and also this is a guy who, when he's on the mat, he'll go for leg lock attempts to use them as sweeps to get in top position. He'll throw big spins, the flying knees. Elizeu Zaleski is a very exciting guy to watch, especially in the stand-up realm. He gives no fucks. And with Aleksei Kunchenko, he's got that Russian coast style. The guy is very stocky. He's short. Maybe he has a little bit of a weakness to the calf kicks, but he lands some calf kicks of his own, which are very, very hard as well. And his clinch game is on point. And you start to slow down on a guy like Aleksei Kunchenko, and he will wear you out. He knows how to win rounds. Such an interesting matchup. Now, again, with the crowd not being there, it's going to be interesting because now when Elizeu Zaleski throws a big spin and misses, no one's going to be going crazy. It's going to be completely silent in there. So, man, I'm not really sure what to think about this one anymore. I think it actually might be a dog or pass situation now. But at the same time, had that Jingliang fight not happened, I think the minus money would be warranted on Zaleski. So I don't want to write him off quite yet. I think we were high on the guy for a reason. But both these guys are not necessarily, bright prospects in terms of both have potential, have top 5 potential or anything like that. But both are I think both are going to keep their spot on the roster for a while. So this is a very important fight for both gentlemen coming into it. And it's very closely matched. I think it's a dog or pass situation, honestly. So with no crowd being here, with no hometown advantage anymore, I'm going to go with Aleksei Kunchenko to eke out a split.
Yeah, this is a very closely matched fight, man, because I feel like a few months ago, Elizeu would have probably been an even bigger favorite against Kunchenko, even if he was undefeated with the 2 wins over Thiago Alves. I mean, it was a decent performance. I mean, he just coasted the entire time, and Yushin Okami, who we know who was also on his way out. So I feel like a lot of people jumped the gun on Kunchenko as a prospect. He's on the slower side, in my opinion. 5'8", welterweight. The dude's stocky, but he's just very fundamental. He just sticks to the basics, and nothing crazy. Very good calf kicks. I think it's going to be very hard to implement a calf kick game plan on a guy like on Elizeu. So I think he's going to have to get in here and try to take him down, clinch him, try to manipulate him that way. But Elizeu, yeah, man, it's kind of alarming that he lost to Lee like that, man. And I thought it was a vicious beatdown. I even told you a couple weeks ago that I'm not sure if he's ever going to come back the same. He got dropped down flush in the first round, got hurt again in the second round, and then finished in the third round. It got ugly, man. So I definitely don't see Elizeu probably ever heading back towards where we all thought he was gonna go towards to after that beatdown in China. And Kunchenko was undefeated. So at the same time, it's hard to write both these guys off. It's the definition of a 50-50 fight to me. Elizeu being better on the feet, Kunchenko being probably slightly better in the clinch. I don't see either guy really getting the better of each other on the mat. There's no crowd there. I'll go the opposite side. I'll say Elizeu by decision. But it's gonna be an interesting fight, man.
Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Amanda Ribas, she's 8-1, and Randa Markos is 10-7. Currently, they got Amanda Ribas minus 340. The comeback on Randa Markos is plus 280. Now, Shaq, I gotta know, man, does beating Mackenzie Dern and Emily Whitmire warrant a minus 340 price tag against an established veteran of the division in Randa Markos who's fought literally everyone?
Yeah, she has fought everyone, and she's won 500 against all of them. So, I feel like Markos, is pretty much, we know what she is. She's tough. She's going to fight. She's fought in Brazil before. She's been there. She's fought, yeah, like you said, everyone. But I feel like she's still stagnant. Nothing's really changed. She comes with the takedowns, but it kind of seems like actually she is getting a little older, because I thought around the Angela Hill fight, maybe she is getting better. But then the Gadelia fight, she lost every round. No shame in that. But then the Yoder fight, a spot where I was actually saying, don't bet on Yoder. Yoder still went to split at the end. I remember how everyone was taking shots on Yoder in that fight. I actually thought it was a good fight for Markos, but man, she still almost lost that fight. I thought that was going to be a more dominant win for her, and she was getting taken down, and that fight was coming down to the wire on the point. So I think Markos is a good fighter, but I think this girl Ribas is on a whole different ball game in terms of talent. And I mean, not just beating Whitmire and Dern, but the way she did, man. I mean, talk about domination. I mean, Whitmire got tapped out in the second round, completely dominated. Mackenzie Dern, same thing as well. So I do expect Markos to probably go the 15 minutes because she is a tough girl. But Ribas, the size advantage in this one is drastic in my opinion. I mean, Ribas is huge. I think she cuts a lot of weight and she's still performing very well. And her jiu-jitsu's top-notch, black belt, judo black belt. I think she can take Markos down, outbox her, submit her possibly. I know Markos has had some success against some Brazilians in the past, like Maryna Rodriguez, but Rodriguez doesn't have the ground game that Ribas has, and it's not even close. So I'm going to go with Ribas by 30-26 in Brazil. I think she gets it done here.
Ribas is another girl that likes to feed off the crowd, especially in the walkout. She has a great energy about her, so it's going to be interesting to see her fighting in an empty room as well. But look, Randa Markos is one of the veterans of this division. Randa Markos, if you're not quite up to the level of Randa Markos and you get matched up with her, I mean, she will head and arm throw you. She will smash you. You know, she might even try to get off on that jab from time to time. But in this spot, Amanda Ribas is the much more well put together fighter. And her striking to her takedowns, just her overall game is much more fluid than Randa Markos. So I think she's favored heavily for that reason. It's just about the experience because, you know, I do agree she did dominate Emily Whitmire and Mackenzie Dern, but this is a step up in competition, man. So we'll see how she performs. But everything she showed me up until this point shows me that she can pass this test. So I will go with Amanda Ribas as well. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Jussier Formiga, he's 23-6, and Brandon Moreno is 16-5. Currently, they got Jussier Formiga minus 155. The comeback on Brandon Moreno is plus 135. Well, Shaq, in Brandon Moreno's second stint in the UFC, he's definitely been going out there and impressing, but now he's got this big step up in competition against the division's elite backpacker, Jussier Formiga. You think Brandon Moreno is going to pass this stiff test?
Yeah, I think he's been looking good, but I definitely don't think Askarov and France are on Formiga's level by any stretch. France is good, but I mean, let's be honest here. France was kind of, he beat Tyson Nam, but I mean, it wasn't like it was impressive or anything.
Yeah, my boy Tyson Nam got robbed.
And his fight with Paiva was close. I mean, and then the Askarov fight, he did get taken down a bunch, got controlled a lot in that fight, but it seemed like he would capitalize when they were out in space on the striking. And Formiga kind of it's so hard to, like, if you're not at that level, it's so hard to get Formiga to like open up because he keeps everything so tight and he's only looking to backpack, and it's hard to fight. I know Moreno's hot right now, but this fight kind of reminds me of like a Schnell and Pantoja, where like you got one guy that's surging, one guy coming off a vicious beatdown loss. But it's a whole different ball game up at that top 3-4 level, man. So I'm actually going to go with Formiga here. I think he is going to get the better of the grappling, avoid the big shots of Moreno. But Moreno is improving. Maybe he can land a knee or an uppercut, but Formiga I don't think he's a guy that really needs the crowd with his style. I think he'll be just fine. It's probably, he can come in here and put everyone. Formiga might be I'm just kidding. That's not a smoke break fight, but I think Formiga's so many times, man, where he's gone out there. Remember the Sergio fight where everyone thought Sergio was going to be able to keep it on the feet, and he went out there and backpacked him. I know he's coming off a Nell, but I just think it's a different level, man. So I'm going to go with Formiga by decision.
Look, I agree. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Formiga that went out there and decisively beat the uncrowned champion, Davison Daistugera Figueiredo. So, look, I do respect Brandon Moreno a lot. I feel like he's definitely made huge improvements. He's a completely different guy this stint than he was the first time around. So he's coming out here having some great shows. Really like what I'm seeing out of him. But now you got the top 3 gatekeeper in Formiga, who you got to be able to get past the backpack, and I'm not entirely sure that Brandon Moreno will, man. We saw moments in that Askarov fight on the mat that lead me to believe someone of Formiga's caliber could capitalize, and I think that's what's going to happen, man. I don't think that necessarily he's going to finish Brandon Moreno, but I think he's going to have enough back control or top control to seal a decision here. So I will also go with Jussier Formiga, but win or lose, I think Brandon Moreno's got a very bright future. I like the improvements I've been seeing out of him. All right, time for the main card, Shaq, because first up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Francisco Masuranduba Trinaldo, who's 24-7, and John Makdessi is 17-6.
John the scumbag Makdessi.
John the Snake. Currently, they got Francisco Trinaldo minus 160. The comeback on John Makdessi is plus 140. Shaq, I really wish the Brazilian crowd was here to cheer on Francisco Trinaldo, but do you still think he has enough firepower to break the jaw of the slimeball Makdessi?
Man, I really needed that crowd to be there so they could tell him, oh, vamos here, and get in his head. But, yeah, look, Makdessi is a good fighter, a good point fighter. But, man, the guy is a sleazy fuck, huh? I mean.
Oh, man.
I mean. I'm sure it'll come out eventually. But
let's just say he had to leave Rufus Sport ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, he had to get out of Milwaukee and fast. And he's on a 3-fight win streak. I think the competition has lightened up a little bit. He fought Ross Pearson. He fought Abel Trujillo. He fought Jesus Pinedo. All three of those guys are no longer in the UFC. And, he likes to do his sidekick game and his jabs, and he likes to keep things real slow-paced and, just, play it safe for the most part. And he's a good kickboxer. It's facts. But we always known that his chin is, he's had his jaw broken twice, I believe. His chin definitely has failed him in the past. And when you're talking about a guy like Francisco Trinaldo, even at 42 years old, this guy's still super aggressive. He still throws big bombs. In my opinion, he beat Alexander Hernandez. I still think he can perform on that level. And, the Bobby Green fight, some people think that, it was closer than the card said, but I think Trinaldo did enough to get the job done there. And I just think that Trinaldo moves forward in this fight and really throws that hard left hand upstairs on Makdessi that Makdessi's not going to like it. This ain't, a young Peruvian kid like Pinedo anymore. And I mean, I don't want to say he barely got through that fight, but, at times, if
Pinedo was a little bit better.
Exactly. Like, you know what I'm saying?
He could have won.
The fight was in reach for Pinedo, and Ross Pearson. I mean, that guy's, I think is he bare knuckle or pro boxing now? I mean, Ross is.
Shout out to Ross Pearson.
Shout out to Ross. Ross had some good wins on the way, but and Abel Trujillo. I mean, last time I heard anything from Abel Trujillo,
we don't even want to repeat the things we heard.
I don't even want to get into that. So, I think. Oh yeah, I mean, Makdessi, like. The shit that Makdessi's out here.
I mean, we could ruin his career right now, but I'm not going to.
The shit that Makdessi's out here doing is just mind-boggling. But I hear he's at the lab now. I hear he's with Benson's down there with him right now, actually. But I just think that Trinaldo's gonna come out here and move forward on him. It sucks that there's no crowd. Who knows how it's gonna affect the fight? Maybe it does affect the fight now, just because. Makdessi, he likes to weasel and he likes to point, but I just see Trinaldo hitting the power I think it's going to be able to bring back some of those chin issues up with Makdessi, and I think that he'll drop him along the way and win this decision. I still think he'll win his decision in Brazil without the crowd by landing the harder shots throughout the 3 rounds. He's not going to have to worry about a wrestling. That's usually one of his weaknesses. He's not going to have to worry about that here. I don't think Makdessi has the KO power to knock him out. Another weakness with Trinaldo in some fights. And, I think this is a good matchup for him.
Yeah, look, I agree. And with the Brazilian crowd there, it would have been perfect because the scorecards might have already been sealed off for Trinaldo. And they might still be. Look, Masuranduba Trinaldo has a lot of pull in Brazil. This is a very well-respected, I say young man, but this is a very well-respected man. You know what I'm saying? This is a guy who, just the name Masuranduba, that Brazilian, what does it stand for again? Like, isn't it some kind of wood? You know what I'm saying? The guy's fucking made of wood, bro. As far as this matchup is concerned, firstly, I got a lot of respect for the the ageless wonders, guys like Francisco Trinaldo who can still be so competitive this deep into their careers. My boy's out here, I think he's 42 years old doing his thing, so I like that about him. And as far as the dynamic of the matchup goes, look, we know John Makdessi wants to point fight. We know he wants to circle around on the outside, but man, when he's tried to do that against Muay Thai strikers in the past, it hasn't worked. I mean, I know you guys remember, or you might not remember because it was kind of boring, but I remember because it was in Atlanta, Georgia, but the Anthony Njokuani fight, that shit didn't work there. And now with Francisco Trinaldo, it's just a big difference in the power that he brings to the table. When he starts getting off on that left hand, dudes definitely feel it. And I think John Makdessi is going to feel it too, man. And I think he's going to re-break John Makdessi's jaw as well. So I'm going with Francisco Masuranduba Trinaldo via vicious knockout here. I think it's going to be an overhand left. I think he's going to floor Makdessi, and it's too bad he can't be there to cheer, to have the Brazilian crowd cheering for him. But I think afterwards they'll have a nice after-party celebration, and Masuranduba will have yet another victory inside the UFC's octagon. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Johnny Walker, he's 17-4, and Nikita Krylov is 26-7. Currently, they got Johnny Walker minus 135. The comeback on Nikita Krylov is plus 115. Well, shit, I'll be the first to say I might have jumped the gun a little bit with Johnny Walker. I thought that he might have been the guy to go out there and dethrone the great Jones, and turns out that wasn't the case. But look, I'm a man, and I ain't just going to celebrate when I'm right. I'm also going to admit when I'm wrong, and Corey Anderson went out there and put him in his place, and I was shocked he couldn't beat a guy like Corey Anderson. All you had to do was touch him in the chin one time, but he didn't even throw that one time to touch him, so it didn't work out. But speaking of head scratchers, man, Nikita's last fight against Glover Teixeira, that was actually the first time in 33 professional fights that Nikita Krylov's gone the full 3-round distance, and he didn't do too bad, but man, I was thinking this is your showcase fight. This is the chance. Well, I actually picked Glover to go out there and submit him, but I was thinking that while it's on the feet, that this Kyokushin karate style of Nikita Krylov, he's going to be getting off on all these big shots. He's going to have Glover wobbling. He's the first opponent in a long time to not wobble Glover. I mean, even Corey Anderson.
Glover was trying to chase him down. Glover was trying to chase him down.
I've never seen Nikita Krylov run away from someone in a fight before like he did against Glover Teixeira, and man, it was kind of like a big head scratcher for me to see Krylov on the defensive like that. Makes me feel like in this matchup, look, Johnny Walker probably has the more firepower here, and if Krylov was running away from Glover like that, I wonder how he's going to be reacting to these head kicks, to these flying knees. And one thing I want to say about Walker, I think his wrestling defense is kind of underrated. In that fight against Corey Anderson, while he was rocked and he was down on the mat, he got back up very, very quickly. And in that fight against Enrique Silva, which was the last time you saw him go the full 3-round distance, you saw some of his wrestling techniques there as well. So now that he's in there with Faraz and GSP, I'm not saying he's going to come out here some new man or this or that. I'm not going to hype up that change too much, but what I will say is at least he's going out there and having these wrestling practices every day, which is only going to elevate that part of his game that much more, because I actually didn't think his wrestling defense was that bad to begin with. I think he's got a lot of physical tools, but I think now, after taking this first L, now that the hype's died down a little bit, the guy's not bringing in, different chicks into his hotel room every single day on fight week.
I heard he was bringing chicks on fight week to the hotel room.
I think now he's going to settle down a little bit, and I think Krylov is going to respect this power, man. And I think Johnny Walker is going to remind people why he was a hype prospect before the Corey Anderson fight. I think he comes out here. I think it's going to be a head kick. I think it's going to be a flying knee, a Superman punch. I think Johnny Walker comes out here and finishes Nikita Krylov with a knockout.
Krylov's a guy, I've always criticized in the past for his heart, more so with the ground game, where he comes out with the Blachowicz fight, comes out, gets mount, and then goes to his back and then has nothing left. And, at times it's kind of been embarrassing. And he still has that style. I mean, he still gets on top. He still goes to his back. Nothing's really changed. So I think, he has gotten a little bit better. I see he's at ATT now, but throughout the way, man, Johnny Walker is definitely the more physically gifted guy in terms of, knockouts, power. Nikita's only going to, he's a good kicker, but I just have a hard time believing that's going to work here with Johnny. He's going to have to engage at some point. Like you said, he is training those GSP wrestling practices. I'm sure his wrestling is up to par coming into this one. So I actually do think it's a good matchup for Johnny. Nikita Krylov, his only path to victory is if he can get on top of Johnny. But it's gonna be really hard to do that, man, with the type of feints and feints that if he can, that he was showing, in the Serkinov fight, it's gonna be really hard to do. He might run into a knee here, but if he stands there and does what he did against Corey Anderson, and Corey Anderson's the guy that's not necessarily known for his knockout power either, man. So that's kind of be a little bit worrisome as well. But I'll go with Johnny Walker by knockout as well. Nikita Krylov, he kind of just runs away on the outside. He kind of seems like a guy that's kind of, I don't want to see, because he doesn't have that many TKO losses, but it seems like if he fights a real power striker, that I do think that he could be knocked out cold. So I'm going to go with Johnny Walker.
What's interesting about Nikita is that, like, he almost has, like, a point karate style, but the guy's never won a decision in his life. He has 11 career knockouts, 15 submissions.
He's trying to set you up for the takedown. So
it's really interesting with the guy, but that last fight with Glover, I was like, yo,
I mean, on the bright
Nikita.
On the bright side, you could say that his ground game's good enough to take Glover Teixeira's back. What happens if he takes somebody else's back? Because, I mean, Glover Teixeira is like, third degree?
Yeah.
So.
And he got out of Glover's back take, which was good, too.
Maybe we should be thinking, but we'll see.
Yeah, but that running, man, because I really thought going into it that on the feet that he was going to have the chance to knock out Glover, and it was Glover chasing after him. So I was like, yeah, Nikita. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Renato Moicano Carneiro, he's 13-3, and Damir Hadzovic is 13-5. Currently, they got Renato Moicano minus 340. The comeback on Damir Hadzovic is plus 280. Shaq, look, before Renato Moicano's unfortunate 2-fight skid where he got knocked out in both those fights, by the way, I was thinking this guy might be like a future title challenger or a future champion. Turns out I was very wrong about that. But look, now he's not cutting as much weight. He's moving up to lightweight. Somewhat of a hand-picked opponent, but then again, Damir, they call him the Bosnian bomber. Renato Moicano doesn't move his head out that center line. Do you think Damir is live at all for this upset, or is Renato going to show why he's the much more skilled fighter here?
He might not move his head off the center line, but Damir Hadzovic can't stuff a takedown. So, I think, he doesn't move his head off the center line, but I think at 55, he's going to be able to think better, man. I think he was cutting a lot of weight. I mean, before the Aldo fight, he was saying that, since he moved to Florida, that his body's been changing. The weight cuts have been getting a lot tougher. So I know those words came out of his mouth. So it was an issue back then. Not saying that's the reason why he lost the fight, because that's not the reason why. He fought two former champion and Korean Zombie, who's a top 5 contender. And I actually picked Zombie to win that fight. I had a feeling it was a bad matchup for Moicano. So I think that now him coming into this, even though he's moving up, but Hadzovic, man, one thing, every time he fights a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, what happens for the most part? I mean, he gets taken down. That's what happens. I mean, Alan Patrick, he got taken down. I know he knocked out Marcin Held, but what happened for the majority of that fight? What happened when he fought, even Christos fucking Giagos took his ass down. Fucking, there's one more I'm missing.
Alan Patrick.
I said Alan Patrick. Who's the other black belt that he's fought?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I mean, but
and Jocko on the regionals.
And Jocko on the regionals, but I feel like one of Damir's the reasons why. I mean, Damir hasn't really lived up to expectations. The Christos Giagos fight I thought was the perfect fight for him. I thought, all right, this is gonna be Christos is a big meathead. He'll be able to, Euro style on this guy from the outside. But man, he showed up lethargic. I know he said he had a knee injury going into it. So
and his wife had a baby on fight week.
So I am expecting him to show up a little bit better. But even his best performances, like against Polo Reyes, I mean, on the feet, I mean, I don't want to say that Polo Reyes was getting the better of it, but, Damir, I don't think he's as good as a striker that people think he is, or, I just think he's a below 500 guy, or 500 below 500 guy. I think this is a perfect fight for Moicano to get back on track. I actually think he comes out here in styles on Damir, beats him on the feet. You can't forget that this guy Moicano absolutely dominated Calvin Kattar, absolutely ran through Cub Swanson, beat Jeremy Stevens. I mean, it's a completely different ball game than Hadzovic. Hadzovic is out here fucking, like losing to Christos Giagos, like, and getting dropped and hurt by him. I know it was, he had, the circumstances, but I just think that the zombie fight was more so Moicano was just overlooking zombie just because zombie was coming off the knockout loss to Yahya at the time. But I said, look, guys, don't how many times are you ever gonna see an elbow like that? You're never gonna see an elbow like that. I mean, zombie would have won a decision 9 out of 10 times there. So I didn't really fault zombie for that too much. I mean, that props to Yahya. I mean, when are you gonna see upwards elbows like that? So
and zombie could have ran away the last 10 seconds. He wanted to keep fighting.
Like that was just fucking nuts, man. That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen, one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. But I'm gonna go with Moicano here by first round submission. I think he's gonna introduce himself into this new weight class. Hadzovic is a tough guy, but I don't see any improvement in his game, and I think it's because he's training in I mean, look, you live where you live, but he's training down there in Denmark, and I see his gym, on these little YouTube videos, and it's just, the training partners, it's just not up to par for the guys that he's fighting, and that's why I feel like he's struggled when he takes these steps up in competition. So I'm gonna go with Renato Moicano here.
Look, Renato Moicano is so much better than Damir Hadzovic. It's not even close. I mean, we're talking about a former top 5 contender in Renato Moicano. Damir will never sniff the top 10 in his life of any weight class in the UFC. So, there's that part. It's just about Renato. Don't leave your head on that center line. Don't get knocked out. And as long as he doesn't get knocked out, he's going to outclass Damir Hadzovic in a way where we might be reminded why we were so high on Renato Moicano at one point. This is a guy who beat Zubaira Tukhugov, Jeremy Stevens, Calvin Kattar, Cub Swansons.
I forgot about that.
So, I mean, it's just a completely different level of competition. I think Damir Hadzovic is too slow, too unathletic. It's just he's got one path to victory. He's got a puncher's chance. Renato he's got that tall man defense. He is a little bit chinny, so you got to be careful with that. But aside from that, Renato's got him outclassed every aspect of the fight. So I think the long jab, the leg kicks, the takedowns, the back takes, the rear naked chokes. I think Renato Moicano is going to dominate Damir Hadzovic. Co-main event of the evening in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Damian Maia, he's 28-9, and Gilbert Durinho Burns is 17-3. Currently, they got Gilbert Burns minus 175. The comeback on Damian Maia is plus 155. Well, Shaq, 2 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts going at it in the co-main event in Brazil. No one's got a hometown advantage here, but do you think someone has a Jiu-Jitsu advantage?
Man, that's a very good question. I'll say Maia, I guess. I mean, he's got better control in my opinion. His last fight, he even showed his game off his back, but I'd say Burns is better off his back. But in jiu-jitsu, it's hard because, a lot of that shit can be stalemate, man, with when you got 2 guys like these guys, top-level guys. I consider both these guys top, 5, 6. I mean, Maia, obviously, but Burns, I consider him top 5, 6 black belt in the UFC, This fight's real interesting to me, man, because I feel like Burns... I don't view him as a guy at welterweight that's going to be in the title picture, or I think that he has made improvements in his game. I think that everything that he throws has serious power on it, and I feel like he does have the jiu-jitsu to maybe come out here and nullify some of what Damian's looking to do. Damian, against certain guys, he looks to press with the takedowns, but against guys that he knows that can probably have an answer to his jiu-jitsu, like good wrestlers like Usman, Covington, etc., he kind of tries to stand with them a little bit at first. In his last fight against Ben Askren, man, the thing that worries me with Maia is, Ben Askren, I know he's got some funky punches and, everything he doesn't do is unorthodox, but I mean, he bloodied up Damian Maia's face, and I just have a feeling that if Damian Maia stands with Gilbert Burns for too long, that Gilbert Burns at some point is going to find a home for one of these hammers with that right hand and end up dropping him. And if Maia gets dropped, I just don't see him being able to, get his wits together and come back and win this fight. I think that if Maia wins this fight, he has to win the first round, win the second round, win the third, try to flop to his back in the third round. I just think that his stand-up at this stage in his career is a big liability when he's fighting these young guys. And the only reason I say this is because Burns has the jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, to at least avoid getting submitted. I know Rocco Martin's a good black belt, but he's not on Gilbert Burns level. I mean, that's just fact. So I think that Maia, from a betting perspective, the interesting thing is, when Maia opens the dog, I know he was the dog his last fight, but I mean, we picked Maia. Both of us picked Maia to win that fight. I mean, Ben Askren, I mean, what the fuck has Ben Askren done? I mean, Ben Askren should have been 0-3 in the UFC, you know what I'm saying? But, hey, we appreciate what he did. I mean, I'm with the trade. The trade was great.
Hey, his 3 fights were more entertaining than all the Mighty Mouse's fights combined, so best trade they've ever done. And I'm right.
Mighty Mouse had some good fights.
What was your favorite Mighty Mouse fight?
When he lost to Cejudo. That was my favorite fight. But I think, what was I saying?
About these Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts? About
yeah. But I think that Damian Maia, for the most part, when he opens the underdog, I mean, historically he loses, and I think the fact that he opened the underdog here could be a sign that maybe that Father Time is gonna catch up with him, and these young guys are gonna, or in this specific matchup with Burns, that these young guys can catch up to him. But at the same time, I have seen Burns flop to his back in fights with Gunnar Nelson in that first round, get taken down. But, maybe he feels a little bit more confident. Maybe the game plan's going to be a little bit different. His teammates fought Damian Maia before. Maybe they are looking to execute in different positions here. So I just feel like Burns should be favored, actually. I know Maia's accomplished way more in his career, but, man, I just feel like he's a liability on the stand-up at this stage in his career. And Burns, one thing you can't say that you can say about this guy's got power, man. At 55s, he had power. Now he's bringing it up to 70s. The calf kicks that you saw against Kunchenko, and not only the calf kicks, I mean, he absolutely controlled Kunchenko on the mat, too. So, I'm going to go with Gilbert Burns here. I think that he's going to at least win the first 2 rounds. I think Maia could have some success. I'm not 100% sure if Gilbert Burns is ready to deal with Maia in the clinch game, on the fence, and the backpack game. But, I mean, he is a world-class black belt, so I think that Maia might even come at this fight a little bit differently. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to go with Gilbert Burns. I'm going to go with the younger guy, and I think that he hurts Maia somewhere along the way and wins a decision.
Look, I can see what you said happening. I totally can. I mean, Gilbert Burns hits very hard. He's also a serious black belt. But, man, there's a huge size difference here. I mean, you're talking about a former middleweight and Maia taking on a former lightweight and Gilbert Dorino Burns. Now, don't get me wrong. If Gilbert cracks him clean on the chin, I do think he's going to get dropped and get hurt. But I think in these tie-ups that Maia is going to be able to have success getting him down on the ground and not, doing anything crazy on the mat, but just hold position, hold him down, stall him out, and win 2 of the rounds, and then have a very, very sketchy third round where he almost gets finished. And if you have money on Maia, you're like, Damian, So I'm going to go with Damian Maia to edge out these first 2 rounds by just being the bigger man and then having a very sketchy third round where Gilbert almost knocks him out. So I'm going to go with Damian Maia here for the upset. Main event of the evening in the lightweight division, we got Kevin the Motown Phenom Lee. He's 18-5, and Charles Du Bronx Oliveira is 28-8. Currently, they got Kevin Lee -140. The comeback on Charles Oliveira is +120. Shaq, both these guys made their way back to a UFC main event. Both these guys have momentum on their side once again. Who you think gets their first UFC main event win here?
Man, it's an interesting fight because I feel like the crowd not being there.
And real quick, sorry, I'm going to correct myself because Kevin Lee beat Chiesa in a main event. But who do you think gets the main event win here in Brasilia, Brazil on Saturday?
He main evented Tony, right? Too.
Yeah, but he lost that.
Yeah. But yeah, he won. Edson was main event too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin Lee, I'm glad to see him back on track with that win over Gregor. And now that the crowd's not there, I'm interested to see how this is going to play. Because, man, Charles in Brazil with that crowd, you already know it would have been a big factor, man. Does the crowd not being there, man, it's going to be a good, I'm really interested. It's going to be like it's in the UFC Apex or something, like a quiet little venue with a very little people there. So I'm interested to see. I think that Charles has been fighting some lesser competition. He has been steamrolling them. David Tamor, it was probably the best name on the 6-fight win streak, right?
Yeah.
He had to beat Christos. He beat Nick Lentz, who he already beat. Jared Gordon. I mean, if you Jim Miller, Jim Miller, Clay Guida. So I mean, all those dudes that he beat. I mean, he honestly should have beat. So I think that Kevin Lee is definitely a step up, even though Kevin's been having more mixed results. I mean, the Dos Anjos fight, he got submitted in, and he's lost though. He struggled with guys like this before. I know you remember that Leo Santos fight back in the day in which he got stiffened. I don't know if we can necessarily say Kevin's back just yet. I mean, Gregor Gillespie, I kind of said on the show going into that fight that this guy ain't top 10.
He ain't who you think he is.
I mean, look, Gregor's good, but he his wins just, he beat Vince Pichel and
Yancey
and Jason Gonzalez and Yancey. I mean, I was like, that's cool, but I think that on the ground, man, it's interesting because I don't trust Kevin really anywhere in this fight. I mean, he's had his moments on the mat. He's had his and Charles' stand-up one thing has been getting a lot better. I feel like Charles can actually go out there and stand with guys. He's feigning, he's throwing knees, flying knees, he's throwing uppercuts. I mean, his striking has developed, seriously throughout the last couple of years. Ever since the Paul Felder fight, ever since his daughter. Ever since his daughter got born, this guy's been putting in his work. His striking, I mean, I know Nick Lentz, he already beat a couple times, but man, to actually go out there and floor him the way that he did, I mean, Arnold Allen couldn't do that. I mean, Nick Lentz is a tough guy, man. So
Scotty couldn't do that.
So, I mean, Charles went out there and floored him, put him on his ass. So, Charles has been looking very, very impressive to me. And Kevin Lee, I think Kevin Lee, I've been on the record to say the guy's got all the talents. He's huge. He's got the wrestling. I mean, I know Charles is a black belt, but I do have a feeling you could see something similar to Felder and Charles if Kevin gets on top of him and he clears his submission game, man. If Kevin starts getting off some ground and pound on Charles, I got a feeling it's going to get really ugly. Kevin's ground and pound is vicious, man. It's brutal. And he's at TriStar now. He's putting in work where Johnny Walker's at as well. And I think Kevin was throwing a lot more jabs in his fight with Gregor, so I do kind of see, him showing improvements on the feet. He still gets hit a lot. He still doesn't move his head. He's still chinny a little bit. So, that's one worrisome. I feel like this fight should be a pick'em. So I still slightly favor Kevin Lee. I think that he's stronger. I think that if the fight gets in the late rounds, that it favors him as well. But I'm kind of worried that, man, he might get flashed early with a knee or a Darce, get caught in something. It wouldn't shock me as well. I got a tremendous amount of respect for Oliveira, but the crowd not being there kind of worries me from Oliveira's standpoint. I feel like he's a guy that feeds off the crowd, but man, at the same time, he's never lost in a fight in Brazil in his life. You know what I'm saying? So playing minus money on Kevin with these type of circumstances is sketchy as well. But I think Kevin's stronger. I think that if Kevin can clear his subs in the early portion and avoid getting knocked out with the knee, I think that this fight favors him. I think that if he starts getting off on some ground and pound, that Charles is really not going to like it. And I think that Kevin could get a late TKO finish. So I'll go with Kevin Lee.
Both these guys are so damn talented. It's really a great matchup, obviously, with Charles do Bronx. When he came to the UFC at 19 years old, 20 years old, and he's going out there chaining all those submission attempts, you really saw the young phenom that he was. And even his striking, man, he's always had that Muay Thai style. He stands upright, goes in there throwing flying knees, mixing in the combos, and he's looking more confident than he ever has. Now, obviously, Charles do Bronx has had some mental hurdles in the past that he's had to overcome. He has had... when things haven't gone his way in the past, he has looked for his way out, even in a main event before. I know you remember that Max Holloway fight. He's faked injuries before, but like you mentioned, he's matured a lot since he had that daughter, or his wife had that daughter. Now he's on the big win streak. Now, granted, he would have beat all those guys at any point in his career, but just the way he's going out there and performing, I am seeing him, patch up those parts of his game where he would have had issues in the past. That fight against David Tamor is a perfect example. There were some spots in that fight where in the past he might have packed it in, but here he got dropped, gets back up, and then he goes on to finish the fight. So that was an example that Charles do Bronx, maybe he has maybe the mental has caught up with the physical with a guy like Charles Oliveira. And with Kevin Lee, it's not necessarily been, I mean, it is a mental thing, but it wasn't necessarily like a quit thing, because you saw the Barboza fight where he got absolutely wobbled and then he still went on to win that round and go on to finish the fight. So he's definitely a very tough guy. It's just with Kevin Lee, it's always been sometimes he's overconfident, and that'll be his downfall. Like he thought that the fight with Leo Santos was over before it even began, and then
I think he's been humbled along the last couple of years. So.
He has been humbled, but now he's coming off a huge knockout win. And you know, when Kevin gets a big win, his head explodes in a way where you got to bring Kevin back down to earth. And this is an interesting fight. I agree with Lee being favored just in the sense that, you know, he's the more physical guy. He's bigger. He might be able to swim through some submission attempts, might be able to neutralize here. But 5 rounds for Charles Oliveira to maintain that undefeated record in Brazil and get a finish along the way. You got dog odds on it on Charles Oliveira. So I think when you get dog odds on Charles Oliveira in Brazil against someone who got submitted 1 fight ago, by the way, I think I think you got to go that direction, but it could be a close fight. But I'm going to lean with the dog here. So I'm going to go with Charles do Bronx Oliveira to finish Kevin Lee somewhere along the way. Well, Shaq, before we answer these fan questions, just got to remind them to go to bestfightpicks.com. Use that promo code 2020 to save 20% off our VIPs, bestfightpicks.com. And Shaq, let's answer some of these fan questions. So, and Jimmy the Drunk asks, what's the story behind the name Half the Battle? What made you name your pod that? I mean, I think it's a good name, right? I think it was pretty fitting with how we get down to the point, and that is half the battle. So I really appreciate the question, man. Johnny Boy says, think Moicano is live for a stunt considering he's moving up in weight and is nearly a 4-1 favorite?
Do I think he's live for a stunt this weekend?
Yeah.
I mean, if he gets caught, but I don't think he is, man. I think Hadzovic is too slow. I think Hadzovic, you know, isn't the striker that some think he is, but we'll see, man. I think that he's rightfully a big favorite.
Jack Scott says, what champion is least likely to hold the belt at the end of 2020? I mean, Israel's got to fight Paulo Costa. That's a tough fight. And Stipe's got some tough contenders in his division, too. I'm going to say either Israel or Stipe.
Yeah, I'll say Stipe.
Havenwood Jim says, which current UFC fighter could benefit the most from a weight class change, up or down? Feels like all the dudes have been making these changes that need to.
Mikhail Oleksiejczuk needs to go to 85.
Yeah, Michal Oleksiejczuk, go to 185, dude. Fat ass.
That's right.
My boy Cap Kobe says, my question to you is on that Emmers fight. I really thought Emmers won, and he thinks it was a bad decision. He wants to know, what is your take, and, you know, could it be a draw, and would it have been a fair conclusion of the Romero fight if they scored it 1, 2, and 5 for Romero?
Okay, I see your points on both. Like Emmers, look, Emmers definitely fucked Chikadze up more for 100%. Like Chikadze might have had to go to the hospital afterwards, but like I did think that Chikadze won like the first 8 minutes of that fight. I mean the first round for sure he dropped him. I mean, Chikadze definitely won the first round. Emmers definitely won the third round. It was about the second round because Emmers did start to towards the end of it start to take over, but I just thought that he started too late, to be honest, man. I scored it for Chikadze. I think he just styled on him for a little bit too long. But I don't, you know, and as far as the Yoel fight, it was funny because, all right, you know, me and you are watching. I'm like, okay, he's up 2 rounds. He's probably up 2 rounds. Let's see, you know, he just needs 1 more round. And the 5th round was close, but, man, I'm not 100%. I knew 100% sure he wasn't going to get that 2nd round on all 3 cards. I mean, Adesanya fought a smart fight. He did what he had to do to get the win. I thought Adesanya at least won 3 rounds, at least 3 to 4 and 5. So, I got, you know, Yoel can only blame himself, man. I mean,
look, Yoel had
every opportunity, like it was there.
Yoel had moments, but he just didn't take it, man. He should have taken it, man. He had every chance to win that fight. He's got no one to blame but himself for that one. MMA Casual said, who is the mush of the week? Like, who is the one that everyone's on that's going to lose? You know, last week it was Joanna. The week before it was Tom Breeze. Who's it this week? I'm not sure. I haven't really been on Twitter much. Maybe Kevin Lee. I'm not sure. Maybe John Makdessi.
Yeah, maybe him.
John Makdessi. All right, Zach says, who are the top UFC fighters for each mixed martial art? Let's just answer a couple. Like, who's the best boxer in MMA? Paulo Costa?
Best boxer in MMA. Costa's up there. You got Masvidal's up there.
For MMA, Poirier. For MMA.
Diaz, McGregor. You know.
All right, wrestling. Who are the best wrestlers? Habib,
Usman.
Colby's really good too. Oh yeah, and for boxing for MMA, add Santiago Ponzinibbio to that list as well. All right, Muay Thai.
Muay Thai, you got Jose Aldo,
Cerrone, Edson Barboza.
Edson.
There's a lot of good ones, man.
Tons.
Cyril Gane. My boy. All right. Don't do that says, can Muay Thai fighters make more in Thailand than doing MMA in U.S.? Well, it just depends, man. Because
it depends on how many fights they're willing to take.
It's a really oversaturated market. There's dudes fighting every single weekend. Every day, actually. But it depends how good you are. If you're the fucking man over there, if you're the king shit, yes. Yeah. But if not, no.
If you're just an average old bloke,
you get 50 cents for a fight over there.
But if you're actually winning, yeah.
But they start to call you crew and stuff like that, then you might be getting some bucks over there.
I hear there's Muay Thai leagues every single day, like fucking all over. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. And you can actually bet on the fights while you're there. Like, just throw down real money. Nico says top 3 refs in MMA. So I want to say this might be a controversial opinion. This might be, someone's going to call me a hypocrite because in the past I've heavily criticized this guy. But dude, this guy has really turned things around and has become someone that I can actually rely on, is really consistent these days. He's really turned things around. That's Mark Goddard, man. I used to shit on this guy all the time because he would, inject himself into fights unnecessarily. Like, you remember that Chito Vera versus Davey Grant fight. But, man, and he's had some questionable stoppages like the Joe Lozon versus Iaquinta fight. But, like, dude, I really feel like these last few years, Goddard stepped up. He's taken full accountability, and he's really shown to be a good authority as a ref. So I like Goddard, but I also like my boy Rosenthal, Josh Rosenthal. I think he's one of the best. I think he's very underutilized. And I gotta name one more. Who's one more, Shaq? Name one more for me. Who's been doing their thing lately?
I like Tyone. I like what's the guy's name? Is it Marc Andre?
Marc-Andre Barriou?
Nah, not Barriou. But he's got like kind of a bald head with like a mullet in the back. It's just like
Montalvo.
The guy, what's his name? Gasper Oliver. I know he's kind of. I know he wears makeup, but he's actually a good ref. Like, he's on point. So there's some good refs out there, man.
Definitely, man.
It's just we don't get to see some of them on every card. They only do the ones that are, on their side of town. So
Blake Grice has gotten a lot better.
Blake Grice is good, man. When he's in the UFC, he kind of, turns into a control freak. But
So a couple of these YouTube questions. YOLO says, what the fuck happened to Renato Moicano? He goes from beating Stevens, Cub, and Cater and then been KO'd back-to-back.
What happened was Jose Aldo is a bad motherfucker. And Jose Aldo and Andre Pedernera's punked. I don't know if y'all know this. Yeah, we do. But, like, they were honestly they were getting into it on IG, man. They were telling Moicano that he wasn't Brazilian anymore and that how he was an American boy and, how he left Brazil. And, Moicano decided to respond and, they took it and ran with it and they were bullying him on IG.
Look, Moicano's a guy that used to have a poster of Jose Aldo in his bedroom and then all of a sudden he's got to fight him and then his hero's telling him he's not Brazilian. Like, dude.
Telling him that he's going to whip his ass. And
Renato was broken before that fight even started. And then Zombie was just a horrendous matchup for him. But I think now, assuming that those fights didn't completely diminish his confidence, I think we might see glimpses of the old Moicano here. He's got the perfect matchup to do so. So It's up to Moicano to step up, and hopefully he does. Dimitar says, do you think the odds makers are disrespecting Overeem against Harris? According to Dimitar, Overeem should be the favorite, especially after the recent things Harris went through.
Okay, well, I see where you're coming from, but the favorite I think is a stretch just because Overeem, you saw his last fight, right? I mean, he got knocked out, and what about all his other fights? I know Harris has definitely been dealing with some issues, but man, I'm not 100% sure that Overeem can take that punch at this stage in his career. I know Overeem might be the more well-rounded guy, but I think Harris should be slightly favored. But I see where you're coming from, though.
I think Harris is going to knock his head into the 10th row and have an incredible moment when he wins this fight. All right, now, Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC Brasilia?
My fight to watch is going to be Johnny Walker versus Nikita Krylov. I mean, Johnny Walker, he's got to redeem himself after he got knocked out against Corey Anderson. Everyone wanted him to touch Corey's chin, and he couldn't do that. Nikita, I've been thinking he's been getting a little bit better. Still a young guy. If he can get this win, man, this will be a huge win for him. He'll be in that official top 10 at light heavyweight, and he'll get a big fight. So I think maybe even the winner of this fight gets maybe a possible main event or down the line. So I think that's my fight to watch. I got to see which 205 prospect emerges.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the fights to watch for me. My fight to watch is Elizeu Zaleski versus Aleksei Kunchenko. It's a very interesting stylistic matchup. You got a very exciting fighter in Elizeu Zaleski taking on a bit of a Russian coaster in Aleksei Kunchenko. Both guys had massive win streaks prior to their recent setbacks. So one guy's going to get back on track, and one guy is going to have a very unfamiliar feeling of losing 2 fights in a row. So I cannot wait to see what happens when Aleksei Kunchenko and Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos throw down in the center of the octagon. Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC on ESPN Plus 28?
My fighter to watch is going to be Amanda Ribas. She's fighting Randa Markos. She's got a perennial tough out, a staple of the division. And I feel like if she can get this win, she'll be lined up for a big fight. Hopefully they don't do her versus my girl Yan or anything like that. But I do think that she's going to be a good star for this division with her personality. So I'm gonna say Amanda Ribas is my fighter to watch.
Yeah, look, for me, my fighter to watch is Charles Oliveira. This is a guy who's had his ups, has had his downs, but has always had that potential, has the most submissions in UFC history. Now you see him going out there winning fights by knockout. And if he can go out there and get a main event win over Kevin Lee in Brazil, that's only going to propel Charles Oliveira to not necessarily be a title challenger, Shaq, but to be a star, to be a guy that the UFC can always rely on to put on an exciting fight. I mean, he already is that guy that they can rely on, but now he can maybe be a more consistent main event fighter if he can go out here and get this win over Kevin Lee, especially a dominant win, especially a finish. So Charles Oliveira is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, we did it. It's going down this Saturday in Brasilia, Brazil. They can follow you at MMA Genius 05 or Shaq BFP on Instagram. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. You can get our bets at bestfightpicks.com. Use that promo code 2020 for 20% off our VIPs, or hit us up individually. Use that promo code Shaq for 10% off. Use that promo code Dan for 10% off at bestfightpicks.com, all lowercase. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, and all the places where we are available. We truly appreciate all of your support. We will be back next week. Thank you guys again. Bestfightpicks.com. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.